Chapter 12, Widening Horizons. Civil Rights of Women, 1970s, 1980s. The Civil Rights Movement of the 1960s affirmed the validity and importance of different cultures. Colleges started offering courses in African American, Asian American, and Chicano studies. African Americans donned dashikis, sported Afro hairstyles, traveled to Africa for the first time. Japanese Americans began studying the Japanese language, invited non-Japanese to their home, and served meals with chopsticks. This also affected women's rights. 1970, women worked to pass the Equal Rights Amendment. Although it didn't pass, they fought against institutionalized sexism, demanded equal job opportunities, equal pay for equal work, and tried to end monogamous marriages. Others struggled for liberalized abortion laws. Inside homes, women concluded that the unequal load required remedying. They needed the freedom to develop their careers, however, transformation would not happen overnight. Nisei women and liberation. While women in general had a tough time demanding their rights, Nisei women had double the weight of gender and race. Unlike their mothers, who were content to be a wife and mother, Nisei women said no. They grew up in a different world. They continued to support their children. They also needed to expand their horizons. With their children in school, Nisei women put their own training and talents to use. They found work as stenographer, bookkeepers, teachers, social workers, department store clerks, dental hygienists, and other jobs that were previously denied to them. The workplace motivated her to find a more satisfying sense of self, exploit their talents, explore their inner selves. However, the responsibilities of both home and work resulted in less time and energy for personal interests. As a result, this put a strain on their marriage. Ms. Scott's research found that some interesting results. Japanese American women who married non-Japanese men had marriages that worked out. For example, Japanese American women who married Japanese men remained close to traditional Japanese culture and maintained a degree of traditionalism regarding the woman's place in the home. While both groups of Japanese American women agreed that children are their primary importance, women married to non-Japanese men were less likely to feel any obligation to her husband's family. They were also less likely to believe that family interests should take priority over individual fulfillment. And only a couple of women felt that the husband should be the head of the household. In the 1970s, there was a radical notion that husbands should share half of the housework. Among Japanese American men, that was a hard no. This continued until the husbands retired. By then, Issei women were widowed and moved into their Nisei daughter's home. Issei women agreed this must be avoided unless certain circumstances require it. For example, if it's not made feasible to maintain two separate households, or if the mother required physical care, then they care for them at home. Most nursing homes are still managed by whites who were considered foreign by their Issei mothers. In these situations, most of the caregiving was done by the Nisei daughters. So, when Nisei women were in a state of transition, they were fulfilling many of the traditional expectations. Nisei women in the public arena during the second half of the 1970s, Nisei women experienced increasing independence as their children were becoming adults and living home. They took classes for self-improvement as well as learning Japanese arts. Some began volunteering at local senior centers. Many traveled alone or with their spouse or with their female friends. Most did not run for political office. Some exceptions came from Hawaii: Patsy Takemoto Mink, Jean Sakako King, and Patricia F. Saiki. During the 1980s, Nisei women began to assert themselves in Japanese American organizations such as the JACL. Nisei women in JACL, by the 1980s, they have been prodded by a few Nisei women and more liberal-minded sansei to take on different configuration. A number of them attained key positions. In turn, they played an integral part in the campaign for redress from the government for the abolishment of the rights of Japanese Americans during the Second World War. A redress movement The first resolution was drafted in 1970. Subsequent ones were drafted in 1972, 74, 76. Each new one was more specific than the predecessors in demands and strategy for action. 1976, Ms. Wegland wrote a book titled Years of Infamy. She researched, used primary documents, and the evidence pointed to the government's cold-hearted malice and lies and the incarceration of Japanese Americans. Her book was instrumental in the movement for redress and contributed toward its ultimate passage. 1978, they included $25,000 compensation per person. Turning point was when Senator Daniel Inouye changed the focus from redress to compensation to investigating the facts of the internment and recommending remedies. 1988, then President signed the Civil Liberties Act. The commission, Senator S.I. Hayakawa, endorsed the idea of a study commission that was agreeable to Congress. In 1980, then President signed the bill to create the Commission on Wartime Relocation and Internment of Civilians. Over 750 attorneys gave their testimony. For most of them, this was the first time they ever spoke about what happened. A person who came from the team of Jewish survivors of the European Holocaust made certain that Congress clearly understand that their testimony will not heal their pain. Instead, giving the testimony is painful. Survivors are doing a service, not the other way around. Their testimony rekindled bitter memories, fired the determination that the government be required to apologize and offer a monetary redress so that history doesn't repeat itself. Hundreds of women testified. Ms. Kita Hima said her role as an activist and volunteer began at those hearings. The commission stated their findings. The executive order was not justified by military necessity. The decisions which followed weren't based on military conditions. The causes included included racial prejudice, war hysteria, and the failure of political leadership. The Civil Liberties Act of 1988, the redress bill was introduced in 1983. 1988, then President signed into law. Japanese Americans felt that although the money doesn't cover all their losses, it did affirm their faith in the American justice system. NCJAR, National Council for Japanese American Redress. A separate campaign was formed because they didn't think that the route JCL took would redress legislation. They took offense in using that route. Instead, they took the judicial route by filing a class action lawsuit. However, the lawsuit ended when the suit was dismissed. However, the evidence they provided engaged the interest and involvement of people who would never have otherwise participated. NCRR, National Coalition for Redress and Reparations. This was a group formed by the Sansei. Their focus was on educating the public about the removal and imprisonment. They started the Day of Remembrance, February 19th, when all Americans can reflect and take renewed vows to protect the rights of all citizens. They sponsor candlelight ceremonies and marches. They also sent representatives to Washington to lobby for redress and organize a successful campaign for Alameda County workers who were fired shortly after Pearl Harbor was attacked. As of 1990, their job is to monitor the redress payment process and ongoing public education. Women in the redress effort. Ms. Yoshinaga Herzig research found a very important document in the redress effort. She found the original copy of a report by Lieutenant General John DeWitt. Everybody, even the government, thought that report had been destroyed. In that report, he admitted it was more important to carry out the internment because he was racist and believed that all Japanese Americans could not be trusted. Ms. Yoshinaga Herzig was the unsung hero of the redress effort. Other women wrote letters, conducted informational seminars, spoke, and lobbied. Ms. Uehara organized major letter writing campaigns at the grassroots level. She helped shepherd the redress bill through Congress. She lobbied Congress, kept everyone informed, updated of all the developments. Her tenacity and will, she devoted 3 years of her life to this campaign, which led to the ultimate passage of the bill. 1988-1989, Congress had a tough time coming up with money to pay former internees. The Rudman Bill caused severe fiscal restraints, which required zero deficit by 1992. There was also funding that was needed for a drug enforcement program. It looked as though there won't be any money available in 1990. Meanwhile, of the many 60,000 survivors, many were dying every day. Entitlement Program. Senator Daniel K. Inouye proposed making a redress payment a permanent federal entitlement program. The funds will be included in the appropriation bill for the Departments of State, Justice, and Commerce. This was approved by Senate House Conference Committee on November 19, 1989. Then President signed the bill on November 21st. Payments would begin in the fiscal year 1991 with $500 million, 1992 same amount, 1993 up to $250 million, thus retiring the obligation. Representative Robert Matsui with Norman Mineta worked resolutely for the redress cause from the beginning. He declared November 21st, 1989 as a day of redemption and healing for the American system. The redress payments will be made, a wrong has been made right, the national honor has been restored, the values of this country was built on has been reaffirmed. This ends a long ordeal, a march towards redemption. It took almost 50 years. All Americans can vow to never allow that to happen again. Coming of age, 1980, there were 716,331 persons of Japanese ancestry living in the United States. For women, the median age is 35.9 and 54% of the Japanese American population. This was in sharp contrast to the 120,000 in 1940. According to Asian Week newsletter, they appear to be the most assimilated of all Asian Pacific Islander groups based on language, ability, income, and education. Nisei women were starting to feel that it's alright to be Japanese and woman. Most had retired. Most would enjoy comfortable, if not modest, retirement. It's never too late. They increased activities, organized conference, workshops for self-discovery, self-recovery, and self-improvement. They ventured into uncharted territory such as the arts, painting, potting, sculpting, making jewelry, and becoming award-winning flower arrangers. Ms. Soji wrote and starred in a one-woman show about growing up Japanese American and female. Later she did another one about her marriage. Sadly, she did pass away before she completed her third play about her Issei mother. However, she did inspire her granddaughter to write. Ms. Hager went on a sailing solo trip to Hawaii in 1983 at the age of 62 years old. She did another one in Japan in 1984. The greatest explosion of expression was in writing. There's a lot of people, Michi Wegland, Monica Sonet, Akemi Kikimura, Evelyn Nakano Glenn, Nikki Sawada, Jean Wakatsuki Houston, Yoshiko Uchida, Hisaye Yamamoto, Patsy Sumie Saiki, Wakako Yamauchi. The legacy, they were able to take advantage of the opportunities that were given to them. They can grow, express themselves in a wide range of activities, including work. They were forced to face a hostile world of school, play, and work. The rejection, hatred, and abuse cut deep into her heart. The changing American political screen allowed healing, renewal, and growth. They passed on the legacy of a strong family, as well as other positive cultural values to the Sansei children. The family is a solid foundation of everything that is good and valuable in their lives. So for me, I have attended the Day of Remembrance several years ago. It is a sobering experience to be in a room full of Japanese Americans who either they actually went through it or their parents, grandparents, great-grandparents went through it. And it's also a time to reflect as well. All the things that have happened since then, because we do know 2001. Japanese Americans were the ones who first noticed, wait a minute, 9/11 happened, all of a sudden their Middle Eastern neighbors are disappearing, and they're the ones who forced the government to admit what they were doing behind the scenes, and they forced the government to stop causing all these people to disappear. So again, history repeats itself, but this time, they have Japanese Americans as their ally because they went through this, and they need to make sure that the government doesn't make the same mistake. So in a few days, I will start talking about the Sansei, the third generation of Japanese Americans in this country. So I shall see you next time. Take care. See ya.